Sir Richard Branson, ladies and gentlemen. We are thrilled to have you here today. You need no introduction, but I'm going to give you one anyway. You've started over 400 companies in your career of managing businesses over 5 decades. I'm sure that there's going to be a bunch of valuable insight that you can provide to all the business owners that are here. So screw it, let's get on and do it. And I'm really excited personally. This is great for me. So I'm just going to start. You started all this when you were a kid. You were 16 years old. You launched a magazine, Student, and you then went on to launch Virgin Records. Now, I'm pretty passionate about music myself, and I know a little bit about the music business. Not an easy business. You had no experience in production. So talk a little bit about this entrepreneurial spirit. You're 16 years old. Where'd this all come from?
Well, first of all, hi everybody, and thanks for a lovely welcome. I think I just saw lots of mobile phones. There are people behind me. You had Sarah Blakely here earlier today, did you? Did she tell a story? Yeah, well, I bullied her a little when she was very young, but she did really well. So. And she survived, so I'm glad to say.
And she's still young.
And all the girls have got great butts as a result. And of course, you're not allowed to say things like that anymore. But anyway, we're very pleased that that business exists. Right, you had a question for me? That's all right. Look, I think, I was interested. As a sort of young 14, 15-year-old on what was going on around the world. And I was inquisitive. And the Vietnamese War was raging. And it seemed to me, as it seemed to a lot of young people, a very unjust war, as most wars actually turn out to be. And I, like a lot of other people, wanted to campaign to try to stop it. There was no young person's magazine at the time. And it's quite strange, because I'm dyslexic, that I should feel that I can... who's dyslexic in this room? all the best people in the world are dyslexic. Sorry to the rest of you, but anyway. So being dyslexic, thinking that I could be an editor of a magazine, but anyway, I thought I could give it a shot, and so I decided to leave school and start a magazine a campaigning magazine to try to reform education and try to tackle issues like things like the Vietnamese War and the Biafran War and other wars that were going on at the time. I never thought I was becoming an entrepreneur. I don't think the word entrepreneur actually existed 50 years ago. In Britain, all businesses were run by governments, really. British Gas, right. British Coal, British Telecom, British Airways. So the word entrepreneur didn't really exist. But in starting this magazine, I had to make sure it survived. I didn't have any money, so I had to worry about printing and paper manufacturing and distribution and selling it, and that started taking up quite a lot of time. And the word survival was very important, because in those days you couldn't raise money to start your businesses. You had to sort of try to
start them.
fund them from people wanting to buy advertising or buying copies of your magazine. And so I learned the art of being an entrepreneur. In the jungle, trying to survive, and the magazine became my education, and it was a lot of fun, and one thing led on to another.
Well, so as you said, it was survival, and you're struggling. So of course, when that happens, you enter the music business, right? I mean, that's exactly what you do at a time like that. Not the easiest business. You yourself have said you knew very little about music, but it's a great story. I mean, how'd you get into the music business? How'd you start Virgin Records? Became such a powerhouse in the music business.
Well, first of all, you have to come up with the name of a brand, and And as a 15, 16-year-old, I was sitting around in a basement. And one of the girls who was sitting there with me said, "Well, we're all virgins," and laughed hysterically, and said, "Why don't you call it Virgin?" And the only other name we had was Slip Disc Records, and
You chose well.
Slip Disc Airlines may not have worked well. Anyway, we went for Virgin. It took us 4 years for the registry office to let us register it. They claimed it was rude, and after 3 or 4 years, I got the dictionary out and I wrote at them a letter and said, "Look, the English dictionary says that the virgin is the opposite of rude. It's pure, it's untouched, it's unblemished, it's everything that's perfect." And finally, they
relented.
They gave in, and I'm not sure how pure it was after we'd had it for a few years, but anyway, but we then. So the music business just simply came about, again, a bit by accident. A young lad of 15 brought me a tape, and I loved the music. And he said that no record company would put the music out. So I said, "Well, look, let me go and try a few record companies myself." And after going around 8 record companies and being turned down, I thought, screw it, let's do it. We'll start a record company. And Virgin Records was then born. And this 15-year-old's album was called Tubular Bells. And it was just music, no vocals. Yeah. But it outsold Dark Side of the Moon by Pink Floyd. So, I mean, it was a big hit at the time.
Big record, yeah.
And we managed to get The Exorcist to use it as their soundtrack, and it did well. And that really started building what became the biggest independent record company in the world. And I mean, I'd always wanted to sign the Rolling Stones. I kept trying.
That must have been so exciting when you finally did that.
That was a great day.
Yeah, that must have been a great day. I mean, it's a great day to go see the Rolling Stones, but to actually
it was brilliant. And I'd never really smoked. And Keith Richards taught me to roll a joint on the day that we signed the Rolling Stones. And I'm hopeless at it ever since.
So, you start a magazine.
This is a Goldman Sachs conference, sorry.
So you start a magazine and then you enter this terribly difficult business, the music business, that most people fail in. You have a bunch of success, and so what does somebody do after entering a really tough business and having some success? They start an airline. I mean, who starts an airline? And so you go out to start an airline, and again, you don't know anything about the airline industry, the business models. You probably have read that most people that start airlines fail. There's regulation, there are all sorts of issues. Why did that work? What did you get right about that? What were the lessons there? And that's obviously become a huge business.
Well, once again, with the magazine, I started it out of a mission not to make money. With the record company, I started it to get music heard that other people weren't putting out. With the airline, I mean, one or two of you in this room would have heard this story, but it's a good story, so I'm going to tell it again. I was 28 years old. I was trying to get to the Virgin Islands. There was a gorgeous woman waiting for me. It was 6 in the evening. I hadn't been home for 3 weeks, and the American Airlines decide that they're going to bump the flight because they didn't have enough passengers. So I thought, damn it, I'm going to get there somehow or another. So I went to the back of the airport. I hired a plane and hoped my credit card wouldn't bounce. And I borrowed a blackboard and I wrote Virgin Airlines one way, $39 to the BVI. And I went out to all the people who got bumped and I filled up my first plane.
Probably could have charged $49.
So I had to do a few discounts for one or two people. Anyway, so when we got to the BVI, actually I better skip that part of the story. The next morning, with a big smile on my face, I rang up Boeing, and I said, could I talk to your sales department? And
I'd like to buy a 737.
And I was put through to this lovely man called R.J. Wilson, who I will always remember. And he took the phone call, and I said, do you have any second-hand 747s for sale? And he said, well, yes, we do. Could you tell me who you are? And I said, my name's Richard Branson. I have a record company called Virgin. We have Janet Jackson, we had the Rolling Stones, we had the Sex Pistols. And he said, well, what do you want a 747 for? So I said, well, airlines are not that well run, and I think we could start an airline that could give British Airways a run for their money. And there was a long pause, and then I was just very lucky it was him at the other end of the phone call. Once I got to know him later, I realised how lucky I was. Anyway, there was a long pause, and he said, Richard, that's what you said your name was, Richard? Yeah. He said, look, I'll come and see you, he said, but obviously you're going to have to change the name of your company. I mean, nobody would expect an airline with the name Virgin to go the whole way.
That's a good one. I bet you've used that before.
Anyway, he came. We got our 747. I better give one bit of useful business advice. So you can imagine the people who were running the record company with me got in a complete panic when I told them that we were moving into the airline business. And so I had to convince them that the airline wasn't going to bring the record company down. And obviously the most important thing in business is protecting the downside. And so the most important part of the negotiation with Boeing was to persuade them that if the airline didn't work out, as I thought it would, that we could hand the plane back at the end of the first year. And they actually agreed on that. I mean, they wanted to see a competitor to be so they could sell,
more planes.
They could sell planes to that competitor, and also, sharpen what were the price that they got from British Airways. So they agreed, and at the end of that year, people loved Virgin Atlantic, and they sold us 2 more, and the rest is history, as they say. That was 35 years ago.
Yeah. Extraordinary. Not an easy business, for sure. And the fact that you've made it work for such a long time is. Yeah,
I think we set up 3 airlines: Virgin Australia, right, Virgin America, and Virgin Atlantic, and they've all been very successful, and they've been successful. I think, most businesses are successful because of the people, but the people only excel if you give them the tools to do a great job, and if they feel loved.
Sure.
And so I think what was critical in Virgin Atlantic was that every single little detail was right. So we were the first airline to introduce seat-back videos, and 5 years before British Airways. And kids who travelled on Virgin would not let their parents travel on any other airline because
Sure.
they wanted to see back videos. And we had stand-up bars for upper-class passengers, and I'm sure lots of romances started at our
Upper-class
at our
bars.
bars. And we're not the kind of airline that banged on lavatory doors either. So anyway, we were a fun airline.
You're certainly.
Do you want to change the Goldman Sachs brand quickly and put something else?
It's an interesting marriage of brands. Ours could move in your direction a little bit. So let's talk about the future. And by the future, I mean space travel. And so I'd like to cue up a video now. Sir Richard Branson, ladies and gentlemen. We are thrilled to have you here today. You need no introduction, but I'm going to give you one anyway. You've started over 400 companies in your career of managing businesses over 5 decades. I'm sure that there's going to be a bunch of valuable insight that you can provide to all the business owners that are here. So screw it, let's get on and do it. And I'm really excited personally. This is great for me. So I'm just going to start. You started all this when you were a kid. You were 16 years old. You launched a magazine, Student, and you then went on to launch Virgin Records. Now, I'm pretty passionate about music myself, and I know a little bit about the music business. Not an easy business. You had no experience in production. So talk a little bit about this entrepreneurial spirit. You're 16 years old. Where'd this all come from?
Well, first of all, hi everybody, and thanks for a lovely welcome. I think I just saw lots of mobile phones. There are people behind me. You had Sarah Blakely here earlier today, did you? Did she tell a story? Yeah, well, I bullied her a little when she was very young, but she did really well. So. And she survived, so I'm glad to say.
And she's still young.
And all the girls have got great butts as a result. And of course, you're not allowed to say things like that anymore. But anyway, I'm very glad. We're very pleased that that business exists. Right, you had a question for me?
Well,
No, look, I think. I was interested. As a sort of young 14, 15-year-old on what was going on around the world. And I was inquisitive.
I'd love to come with you on it.
So really entrepreneurship to a whole different level. When you talk about space, red tape needs to be, it's got to be an unbelievable thing. I mean, the process of actually doing this and all the issues that are created. What's it taking to get this done? I mean, you said this is a big year, for you with respect to space. What's it taking to get this done?
It's taking 800, in our case, 800 wonderful engineers and technicians working day and night in the Mojave Desert, which isn't the most salubrious place to work, but they're all completely committed to what they're doing. It's taking another couple of hundred engineers in Long Beach working up
Long Beach,
working very hard to get our large rocket launch to put small satellites up, and it's taken sort of 12 years hard work. So this is, this is really a really long-term investment. And what Virgin Galactic is trying to do is slightly different from what Elon is trying to do. What Elon achieved last week was absolutely breathtaking. What we're building is spaceships shaped like shaped like spaceships and also reminiscent of airplanes as well.
Right.
With the idea that people will be able to fly into space on a spaceship and then come back into Earth and land in the same spaceship. And hopefully one day we can develop it from spaceships going to space to point travel and other quite exciting things which we've got planned. So it's been a long haul. We've had I think all three companies that have been working on this have had tears as well as great moments. This year we think we're finally there, and over the next few months, we hope it'll be Virgin Galactic's turn for the world to marvel and for all our team to finally achieve everything they set out to achieve.
So much hard work, obviously, to get something like this done. What is there one or two particular things that have been the biggest technical challenge, the biggest practical challenge of actually executing?
I mean, the one of the biggest technical challenges is coming back into
right.
Into Earth's orbit, and that's been the most dangerous time in past space expeditions. Mm-hmm. Burt Rutan was the genius that developed the mechanism on Virgin Galactic, which effectively turns it into a giant shuttlecock, and it comes back into the Earth's atmosphere just like a shuttlecock. So it slows itself up. Then it reforms again as a spaceship and comes into land. It's a magnificent to see the spaceship folding into a shuttlecock and then coming back out again. Anyway, that's one of many challenges. I mean, with our small Earth, with Virgin Orbit, what we're trying to do is put up with OneWeb, which our partners, 2,000 satellites around the Earth, connecting the billions of people who are not connected at all in remote parts of Bali or Africa and so on. And even remote parts of America. And there, what we've actually done is we've taken Virgin Atlantic, one of the very early Virgin Atlantic 747s, and we're going to fly it up to 50,000 feet attached to the wing of a 747. And then we're going to drop it from a 747, and it's going to fire and go into space from there. So it's quite fun, actually, cool. That we were able just to transfer a 747 from Virgin Atlantic to our space program, and it's now ready. Hopefully mid this year to start operation.
Very, very cool. I mean, really cool. You can hear, in the conversation, and we talk about things, and this is something I've always admired about you. You're a constant life learner. You're really interested in understanding things, learning. You're always trying to learn something new, to expand, your horizons. What are you learning about now that's really exciting you?
I think a good leader has to be a really good listener, and I'm listening to fascinating people all the time. Not famous people, just everybody has some expertise in
Sure.
in something in life, and I get excited by so many new things. I mean, geothermal, for instance.
Not everybody gets excited about geothermal.
Okay.
That's
if you're worried about climate change, you get excited about geothermal.
Absolutely.
No, but I just recently come across some geothermal technology that for the regions of the Caribbean which I happen to live in, and for places, all the way around the center of the Earth. If you drill down 3,000 feet, you come across incredible heat.
Yep.
And that heat, if you can bring it up to the Earth's surface, it works 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and it uses up a tiny amount of space compared to solar or wind, which are both equally very good technologies, but you need more space for them. I don't know. I mean, I'm just very lucky. I mean, my mind is open all the time. We've just Virgin Hyperloop One. I've just come back from Dubai, where they are incredibly excited by the possibilities of Virgin Hyperloop One. I'm off to India on Sunday to talk to the Indians about it. It will be transformative, I think. Yes. Connecting airports, connecting cities, and that's a new technology. We've got a test run outside Las Vegas, which you've been to. And it's just lovely being at the birth of a new technology. Very, very exciting.
Yeah, as we talked about that, I mean, that's a technology that would really be transformative, as it executes. You mention the Caribbean, so I wanted to switch now and talk about Virgin Unite. Just talk a little bit about that. And we were talking a little bit earlier. You've been quoted as saying, business as usual should no longer be an option. We have to make businesses a force for good. And that's something we certainly, believe in and feel very, very strongly about. You've been unbelievable in terms of what you're trying to do, down in the Caribbean more broadly. The devastation of Hurricane Maria and what happened. You felt it on a very personal basis, but for so many others that are affected, and you're obviously, doing a bunch to try to be supportive. But talk about, how do you focus and prioritize where you, given all of your resources, all of your businesses, can really make a difference, to society, to communities? How do you think about that? And talk a little bit about Virgin Unite, Unite BVI, and what you're doing down there.
No, it's a good question. I mean, there are so many problems in this world, and trying to prioritize, which problems to solve and which you just feel you don't have the energy for or the resources for is a really tough one. Which is why we're trying to get, every single business in this room, even if you're a really small business. I love this kid at whatever it was, 8, coming up to me and pitching me earlier in the corridor, and giving me one of his products. He shouldn't give away the products. He must sell them. Anyway,
you're gonna have trouble getting out of here now that someone knows that you were pitched in the corridor.
But I think that if every single person in this room can adopt at least one problem, and if it's just trying to find a roof over the person you keep walking by who's sleeping in the street every day, going to your office, something, but just a problem in this world. I think, every single person in this room will feel, that much better for it, in 50 years' time when they've looked back on their life and their careers. And obviously, as businesses get bigger, you can adopt bigger and bigger and bigger problems. Sure. And you can use your entrepreneurial skills, your resources, your teams to take on some of the really big problems of this world. And I think we cannot let government try to sort the problems of the world out. They haven't got the entrepreneurial skills generally to do so. And it's great fun. I mean, we have something called Audacious Ideas Gathering on Necker every year, where we get some of the more successful people together, and we get throughout the year with TED. We get maybe 300 organizations to pitch, and then we choose 10 of the most important things in the world to try to resolve, and then we go out to try to resolve them every year. It could be a particular kind of blindness in Africa. It could be how do we sort out methane leaks around the world, and can we use satellites to spot them and then alert the companies to these methane leaks, and so on. So as your businesses get more successful, you become more entrepreneurially aware as to how to look at situations in this world. Then you get into a position where you can actually start tackling some of the bigger issues.
That's great. Really, really great. Really, really tremendous what you're doing. Culture is really, really important in business. Culture really matters in business. We've got, thousands of entrepreneurs here, that are building their own cultures, in their businesses. Talk a little bit about what it is about, the culture of your organizations, the culture of the Virgin organizations that you think has been special, that's been differentiated. What's made a difference? Because there's clearly something there, culturally that's really enhanced, all the success that these businesses have had.
I think I touched upon it earlier, but I think it's really looking after your people in a real, genuine sense.
Sure.
So, if I take the Virgin Group headquarters in London, and we do this in a number of companies that we own 100% of. So, we say to our staff, if you want flexible working, that's fine. If you want to work from home, that's fine. If you want to work from home, Fridays and Mondays, that's fine. If you want to go off for 2 months sabbatical, you'll get paid. That's fine. Obviously, we want people to get to do a productive job, but by treating people in an adult way, you get adult behaviour back, and I think treating your people as you would treat your brothers and sisters. Some of you may be, need to,
some brothers and sisters.
But people who get on well with their brothers and sisters, I mean, or the way you treat your children, it should. The phrase "our business is a family" is so misused, but it should genuinely be a family. And if somebody is depressed or down, people should be told, go home for a couple of days, take some time off. It's being a human company, and I think that because of that, I remember when that first second-hand 747 took off 35 years ago at Virgin Atlantic. It was we were about to have the party of a lifetime on board that plane, but the spirit of the staff was just fantastic. And I remember thinking, if the airline survives 20 years, will the spirit still be as good? And it's 35 years now, and the spirit is honestly as good. And I think that's because we make sure that our staff have the tools to do a good job. If you're on there are some pretty crappy airlines out there. If you're on one of those airlines that if somebody wants kosher food, and the staff have to say to the passenger, "I'm sorry, they didn't put it on board today." Or if they want macrobiotic food, and they say the staff didn't put it on board today. After they've said that a few times, they're going to start getting grumpy and unwelcoming, and they haven't been given the tools to do a good job. So it's the little details that matter. If I'm on a Virgin plane, I will have a notebook in my pocket. I will get out and talk to all the customers. I'll talk to all the staff. I'll write things down, lots of ideas, and then I'll make sure that when I get back, most likely the next day, I will tick them off. I mean, not so long ago, I was on the plane, and somebody said all the salt peppers and the salt and pepper pots are getting stolen because the guests love them so much. They were little windmills, and so I rang up our accountant actually rang me up and said, "You've got to get rid of them. We're losing a fortune." Instead of getting rid of them, what we did was we printed underneath them, "Pinched from Virgin Atlantic," and it became one of the best advertising things that we had. So.
That's awesome. It's a great story. Great story. Is there someone out there in business today that you really, really admire?
Oh, look, there are so many people out there I'd really admire. I mean, I think every single entrepreneur who's building a business, it's tough. It's not easy, and it's quite likely that of all the people in this room, I mean, maybe the fact that they're in this room, maybe they've got past that stage, but the failure rates are high. A lot are going to fall flat on their face. Yeah. And I think the entrepreneurs I admire are the ones that, pick themselves up and keep picking themselves up until they succeed.
Figure out how to get it done. Yeah.
Even then it's tough. I mean, it's, we used to have 300 Virgin Megastores around the world. Anybody old enough to remember the Virgin Megastore? And then Steve Jobs came along and created something called the iPod. But fortunately, Virgin is always reinventing itself, so we were okay. But if we'd only stuck to the Virgin Megastore business, as business schools are apt to say, stick with your onions, I wouldn't be sitting here today. And instead, we very quickly moved on to mobile phones and other things.
If you could go back to yourself as a 16-year-old and give yourself one piece of advice based on what you've learned over the last 5 decades, what would that piece of advice be?
Well, my mum had very good advice. If I ever said a even slightly negative word about anybody, which I didn't do very often because she sent me to the mirror, made me stand in front of the mirror for 10 minutes and look in the mirror, and she just said, "It reflects so badly on you. I don't want you ever to say ill of anybody ever again." And I think that's really good advice. I think especially as a leader, you've got to always be looking for the best in people. And if you look for the best, you get the best.
So I'm just going to do a quick lightning round to wrap up here. A couple of quick questions, quick responses. What keeps you up at night?
Hopefully my wife.
Best thing you've read this year?
I love Sapiens. It's just this professor from Israel has written these 2 or 3 wonderful books, but Sapiens is my favorite.
Your morning routine. What do you do when you get up in the morning? Do you get up in the morning?
I always get up really early. I've always worked and lived from home, and I now happen to find home is on a tiny little island in the Caribbean, so it's rather nice to get up. And I go straight down to the tennis court at 6 o'clock in the morning. I play a tennis pro who's better than me, and then if the wind is up, I'll go kite surfing, and then I'll go and have some breakfast, and the day starts. But I find I just need to make sure the body is singing all the time.
Sounds like a pretty good way to start the day. Not exactly my start on a typical Monday morning in New York.
He actually comes to Necker occasionally, and he does exactly that.
A hobby your favorite hobby?
I think it is kite surfing. Actually, I mean it looks horribly difficult. And anyone, have we got any kite surfers in the room? Anyway, I really recommend it. It's easier to learn than skiing, and it costs very little. You just got to have a kite, and it's just beautiful.
Incredible sense of freedom.
Yeah, out well away from iPads and all that stuff.
The date a man or woman walks on Mars?
I would say 2036.
Okay, we're going to write that down. And
on a Virgin.
we hope so. And on that note, I'm going to say thank you, Sir Richard. This has been a true privilege. Really, thank you.